If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE up, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. We continue our pre-draft preview. Pre-draft preview, say that 20 times fast. We have Jake Schyvinck on today to talk about D-line. I know we did do edge rushers earlier, but we're gonna let Jake dabble there because he's got a couple draft crushes in that group. But we're gonna focus more on defensive tackles and tweeners. But Jake, thank you very much for hopping back on with us again. This is making it consecutive years for you, and we really appreciate your insight into the draft. And obviously, I love all your pre-draft work, but my favorite is after the NFL draft, and you do the Packers picks and how they fit in. So, thank you so much for being back on, and welcome back to the show.
Yeah, great to be here. Had a blast talking about edge rushers last year. That was a lot of fun. I know we took a long time going through the top guys, and I'm sure that I'm going to try to not talk the ear off of everybody because this is a deep class that we're going to probably be talking about today.
It is, and okay, and before we get into it, don't worry, Joe and I, we have reconciled after I have missed 2 shows in a row. I think there will be care packages from my son's birthday party that will smooth that over. But alas, head forth we dive in. And first off, as we've kind of been doing, we're going to recap where the Packers sit. So Packers' current D-line room. So and these are just the guys who really contributed on some sort of significant or meaningful level last year. So in the edge room, you have Rashawn, Lucas, Kingsley, Brenton Cox Jr., and Aaron Mosby. Defensive tackle, you have Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, and Colby Wooden. And the lone free agent of note from that room is TJ Slayton. So I guess we'll start there, you guys. Slayton, any thoughts on whether, I don't think anyone from this class is anywhere near a must resign, but I've kind of gone back and forth on Slayton in terms of team bringing him back. What do you guys think? Right price, right time kind of guy, or they might look to move on to get more of their quote unquote type for Hafley's defense?
I'm kind of up in the air with him. I mean, I'm not going to complain if he's brought back, but I don't think it's a huge loss if he's not. Uh, the sad fact is he probably fits more of a 3-4, so he was better off when the Packers were in a 3-4. But I think he also can fit that Gilbert Brown mold of a 4-3 where he's not going to give you a ton of pass rush, but he's your run stopper that you're gonna trot him out there when it's obvious run situations because he is going to hold up that his gaps. I think a lot of it's going to be what they put around him. So I don't think he's going to be an in-season type of contract extension. It will be towards the end of the season and see what he's done. This is basically his, prove it year. Show
Oh
me
no,
what
he
you
is a
can
free agent
do,
right
and
now.
then. Oh, he is a free agent right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
I thought he had one more year on.
No, he's a 21 pick. So yeah, hold on, let me 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, that's 4 years. So yeah, he's going to be a free agent. What is that, like 10 days or whenever the hell the league year rolls over?
Okay. Well, then I'm completely wrong in everything. I was thinking he still had one more year on the contract. So I don't know. I really don't. If it's the right price, let me rephrase all this. If it's the right price, bring him back. If not, I don't think it's a make or break. Again, I think he is going to, his body type and his play style does fit more 3-4 than it does 4-3. So I think we're set with that with Kenny Clark. And I said this last week with Dan, and I'm going to say it again this week. I do completely disagree with Andy Herman. I don't think Kenny's on a downhill slide. I don't think he's already hit his peak. I think it was just change from 3-4 for his whole career, dating back to UCLA, to going to 4-3 for the first time, probably since high school, if he ever played it in high school. I don't know, I'm not that deep in the woods to know what his defense was in high school, but I know UCLA is pretty good at the 3-3-5, and Green Bay ever since they drafted him has been 3-4. So I think he can pretty much fill the spot of what Slayton does. And then, I guess since I was misthinking everything and thinking TJ still had one more year on his deal, I guess D line has become more of a need than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Slayton, I think it comes down to what are you trying to add to the room through the draft, right? Are you trying to find a player like him who's going to come in on early downs and be that force against the run? Because there are several guys who can do it. So if you feel like, well, we can get a cheaper option mid rounds of the draft, if that's what they feel like they need to add, if they feel comfortable at 3 tech, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a few minutes here, but if they feel comfortable there and they want the 1 tech run stopper, I mean, they could go to the draft for that. I don't know if it's just a TJ Slayton coming back is a must do for them. I think they have other things they want to take care of in terms of the free agents. But yeah, I think it just depends on what they're looking for in the draft. Are they going to want to add two guys to this room, or are they going to just add pass rushers to the room? Like, what's their approach? If they want the run stopper, I think they can get one for pretty cheap in this draft, even, and you get a younger player who I think could maybe find a way to gel with the defensive line. I would prefer, probably, if they want that guy, go to the draft.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth. I like the strides that Slayton has taken in his game, but it really does depend on like what's he going to sign for. The good thing is that guys in that 3-4 nose tackle don't really pass rush much mold, don't sign very early or for very much in free agency. And but at the same time, the like selfish reason I'm against re-signing him is I don't want Slayton being back to give Goody that like, okay, D tackle is good kind of thing, because I do think that the three of us are in agreement that they need to make an improvement. Something that Joe and I focused a lot on this season is they really needed better interior rush. As much grief as the edge rushers got on this team, there was inconsistent to no push from the interior, especially from when Wyatt got hurt early in the season to when Carl Brooks rounded the corner late, and Kenny did too. But there was like a 6 to 7 week gap in the middle, the middle third of the season, where you just got nothing from the interior unless you were blitzing one of Quay or Cooper, and that just can't be, because you can't blitz your linebackers every passing down. So I think I'm like 60-40, 70-30 on no, don't resign him, because like you guys are both saying, this draft has a lot of talent, especially on the interior. There's a lot of depth to this group. And as much as I like Slayton, he really did get the Gravedigger celebration down pat, but you can find that guy again, and they've just got to improve the talent in that room. But moving on, Jake. So, like I said, I'm going to give you the...
Are you ready to unlock your creativity and transform your passion for beauty into a career? Southeastern College is here to help you take your first steps towards training for a career in cosmetology. Unlock your potential and start your path towards a career making people feel confident. It's time to invest in yourself. Visit sec.edu for more information on our programs and take the first step toward training for a brand new career in cosmetology. Your before and after story starts now at Southeastern College.
Floor in terms of what we saw from Hafley this season, and what that means in terms of what kind of, to use the Bill Parcells, what sort of ingredients Groot is gonna stock the pantry with for him. So all three spots, like I said, I know Joe and Dan touched edge before, but edge, D tackle, and then kind of that tweener like end tackle spot. What have you got in terms of guys, body types player types that you're keeping an eye out for the Packers this draft?
Yeah, I would be remiss to not mention 3 Tech to start, right? This is you there's got to be some added juice there. As you mentioned, Devontae Wyatt getting hurt, that stunk. It certainly stunk for this group because you felt like at the beginning of the year, excuse me, that Wyatt was coming into his own, and you could see like, okay, there are incremental steps we're taking here as a pass rusher. Not that he wasn't already good there, but the jump to the NFL is a different level. And it was great to see him start taking those steps. However, when you got to the postseason, and again, it's the Super Bowl champs, that's fair, right? They bullied a lot of people. But to just quickly in that game, fumble aside, whatever. I know there's a lot of stuff about that, but that play, the touchdown right afterwards, where there was just nothing. It was like nobody's going to gain any ground whatsoever. The Eagles could have probably protected Hurts for a half hour back there, honestly, on that play. And it just felt like, okay, I like Wyatt. I like Brooks. I get it. They brought Kenny with the extension. That's great. There's got to be something else here. There's got to be a guy who can at the very least wreak havoc from the 3 Tech alignment. I think more so than what we have now, and potentially, right, as we talk about maybe with the tweeners, but some of these D tackles are kind of in that same vein of like, maybe you can move them around. Maybe you can put one of these guys at the 5 Tech sometimes, and really, kind of put together some new personnel like groupings in 25 on this defensive line if you have guys who are more versatile. So I think you got to find the versatile, maybe not 3 Tech pass rushing type of defensive tackle who also isn't like a superb liability against the run, right? You don't want that either. So I in this
Well,
class,
to
it would
kind of
be
interrupt you on that one,
go ahead.
they technically already have two of them on the team. They just didn't use them as a versatile tackle, and that's Lucas and Rashawn. Because I said it last week with Dan, and Mike and I have talked about it all. It seemed like all year this year. When Lucas played at Iowa, he played more of an interior defensive tackle than he did as an edge. Now he has all the tools to be able to play edge, but he's only he played a lot more D tackle. Same thing with Rashawn. He played more of the D tackle in at Michigan than he did the edge. So really, I don't I get that they didn't want to put too much onto these guys because it's the first year into the system, and didn't want to, okay, well, we want to work you on the edge. We'll maybe mix in a little bit more, but they may be more comfortable in a 4-3 rushing as a tackle than as an edge. So I think we have the versatility. The only thing is Halfley going to use them in that versatility role, or does he view them strictly as an edge type player?
Yeah, that's a fascinating discussion for sure. And yeah, I know Van Ness played a lot in the B gap. I just don't I struggle with Gary and Van Ness being enough of complete players. I know you can move them around, right? You keep them on early downs as edge guys, but I do struggle at times with how I feel like they can translate sometimes inside. And I love what they bring. And I know people don't like this because they like the edge guys to get after the QB. But like they both played pretty darn well against the run this year. Nobody cares that Gary played well against the run, which I don't know why. Like this is a different defense. You kind of like need to do that with
Especially
the
after they kept
fronts.
shooting him about it in the 3-4 schemes under Barry and Pettin before.
Yeah. So like I know that people don't really care about that as much, but like Van Ness and Gary were doing a lot better against the run, and that's part of this switch. You have to be able to defend that. So I got a little off track there, but yeah, I think my thing is I just don't. I think giving Lucas more of a track and Gary more of a track to build it up as pass rushers and I still think they need to do more of converting speed to power. Gary especially. Gary has gotten way too comfortable speed rushing around the edge as a 3-4 linebacker. There's no question. He needs to get back to speed to power stuff. So when you give them more of that track, I think as 5 techs, I like that a little bit more than 3, but I get it that, like, they have played there, they can move around. But I do think, like, with the way Goody wants to build this, and I'm guessing him and Halfley have had conversations about this, right? Of like, yeah, we're gonna stay big at edge. That's what we do here. That we're not like really gonna pivot too much. Like, we want to stay with the 270 guys out there. So yeah, to kind of bring this full circle, I think to find the 3 tech who can kind of do it all, eh, it's gonna take some draft capital to invest it. There's no question, but they got to find that complete player, because they're like, as you said, there are certainly guys that they can move in there event on certain downs, but to find the like guy that's like, yeah, we don't have to take this guy off the field ever. We don't have
Yeah,
to rotate.
basically,
Like,
like what you're getting at is to get that guy that Wyatt was in theory supposed to become, and
yeah,
I still think he can get there. It, like you mentioned, it really does suck that he got hurt
yeah,
at all last season, but especially at the point he did, because it really cratered their overall pass rush. It just truncated because he looked so comfortable within this scheme early in the season. It looked like he was really getting it between the ears. And then, we'll never know, but it felt like he was never fully healthy again last season. Like that, whatever ankle and knee or whatever was ailing him was probably dogging him the whole rest of the season, because he never had that same juice or explosiveness out of his stance that he had early in the season. And it just tanked how good the defense looked. And I know that a lot of his production came against like the Titans and some of the other teams, but like, you lose him. I think it was the Jags game, and then you don't have him against the Lions, and going into that stretch, and the defense just looks totally different. Obviously, you lose Jair as well, but yeah, I agree. They've got to, and it's kind of like the wide receiver room where last year, due to free agent or due to the salary cap situation, you had to some degree bank on your picks and your internal development, because you just didn't have the flexibility or the avenues to go out and sign a guy. Whereas this year, they have some options. You can sign like a Milton Williams or something like that. But I do think it behooves them to as much as people don't want to hear it, they do need to just continue to invest in their defensive line, whether, and that's why this first round pick is probably, it's 40% going to be an edge or a 3 tech type, because, obviously everyone would love for it to be a cornerback, but the likelihood that they're going to find their guy at 23 is not the greatest. There's just more bodies between edge and tackle than there are at just corner in terms of what they're looking for.
Now let me
And
throw this idea out to you,
go
because
for
I
it.
did this with Joey. All right, I get it. Green Bay usually goes defense, or for some reason people are mocking offensive line to the Packers again in the first round this year, and that kind of I'm not sure about that. But 2002 was the last time the Packers took a first round pick wide receiver. The draft is now in Green Bay. I won't say that this is like a horribly deep draft for wide receiver, but
yeah.
there is a good chance that there is a wide receiver that the Packers really
Well,
do love sitting there at 23. Is it
yeah,
possible after 23 years, with the draft being in Green Bay, that the Packers just come out and say, "We're doing it"? Can you imagine the type of fanfare that would happen? That guy would get like the key to the city instantly. He wouldn't even have to see the field and he would be a hero.
it's true. Joe, I appreciate you bringing up wide receiver, even though I'm not here to talk about wide receivers, because I itching to do it anytime possible. I would love that. I think it'd be fantastic if they found the guy for that. I echo Mike's sentiment as well about corner. Just feels like if you look at like the top guys, and then guys coming off injury are kind of the guys that get mocked to Green Bay more. It just feels like Goody's going to have some reservations there. And I think there are plenty of other like mid-round options he might target. So it does feel like defensive line is like the direction they will go. I will say one thing about offensive line. I don't mind it, because if they aren't going to give both tackle extensions this year, there's a chance they're letting Walker walk. And if so, like, I know who did it? Was it might have been DJ who put Josh Simmons there at 23, and it's like, yes, that's another guy off injury, so it kind of makes it's kind of in that same vein of the corners. However, if they're banking on Simmons to be that guy in 25 and beyond and kind of ease him back in, like I could see that. But yeah, like they're trying to do the Zabel thing. We know that. I think we kind of, if the NFL is viewing him as a center, which Brugler has him ranked as a center, I think that there's kind of that indication. I think that's probably out the window, right? But yeah, I think it would be really fun though. Wide receiver would be
Yeah,
a
just to
good
touch
play.
on the offensive lineman point too. This is the year that they're not taking one unless that guy is. I don't want to say definitely, but that guy's got to be able to play left tackle at some point. Like
Yeah.
that's the only like I understood. Like I talked myself around into the Morgan pick where it's like, okay, like I don't know if he can play tackle, but at least he's versatile enough that he should start somewhere for you within a year or two. But this year it goes back to the point about that I keep leaning on with my Jair being on the team this year. Reasoning is that the whole marching orders in the building is we are contending this year. We are Super
Yeah.
Bowl contenders, and I'm not jumping fully into the that so many people jump headlong into their first round pick has to contribute on day one and all that kind of crap. But
Yeah.
you've got to have a guy that at the dead worst you're getting Rashawn or Lucas where it's like there's immense upside, but you're getting some kind of on-field production from the start, and like you can't. I don't want to say you can't, but it would be really hard to stomach drafting, especially an interior lineman that's not day one Alan Faneca coming in for you and stealing, not stealing, he's just taking a starting job and is going to make your line that much better. Like you just can't have that pick play 5% of your snaps on whatever side of the ball this year. Like that's just not an option at this point. And to kind of go back on the corner point, I do think people are starting to realize they would have to trade up, and it would take the this is a super homer scenario, but the scenario where Will Johnson he struggled with
Yeah.
some nagging injuries this year, fell out of the top 10 in some mocks, and if he gets to that 12, 16-ish range, that is you're at the point where Goot's got to start cashing in on some of these.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of extra picks, but this would be the year that it's like, okay, you kind of played the game with Quinyon Mitchell last year. Go get your guy this year,
Yeah.
kind of thing and stuff. But otherwise, that's where I do think D line is the position where it's kind of like, okay, there's going to be a lot of guys. I know we just spent 5-10 minutes talking about 3-tech, and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
the homer in me is like, okay, what's it going to take to go get Mason Graham? But if Johnson slips, Graham is probably going up. There's only so much short arms will drop him in the draft, but that's let's use that as the springboard. Who are the pie dreams and who are the guys who are realistically in range? And we'll just start at 3-tech, Jake, just so we can kind of we don't have to jump all over the place. But 3-tech in day one, where are your eyes looking for the Packers to start off?
Yeah, Mason Graham notwithstanding, I think the two options I think at 23 are Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon. I think those are the two places you have to start. Now Nolan, interestingly, a little more undersized maybe than we expected, right? Coming in at the Senior Bowl, right? I want to make sure I pull this up correctly, but he was is it 293 or something like that? I've almost got it.
He got Florida Stated. That's mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Bobby Bowden, Lawrence Timmons is a 6'4", 250 guy, and he shows up at the combine and he's 6'1", 230 kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That and then Shrine Bowl Jay Higgins. Did you see that way into 226? I'm like, oh my gosh, that dream's done.
Well,
Anyway,
he played like it though. I mean,
he did. He looked big. Well, that's why it was so believable, right? It was kind of like, oh yeah, he looks the part of being big, and then it was tough. That was a tough one. But yeah, Nolan's 6'3" and 293. So that's not, I don't think, a death sentence in terms of the size, right? But early, it might be because Wyatt obviously cleared
well,
the
no.
304
Here's my
threshold.
question:
Okay.
do you think that this could be also a year that Goody and them get outside their thresholds a little bit? because I kind of mentioned this with Dan when we did the edge rushers, that the thresholds the Packers had for many years were under the 3-4 defense.
Yeah.
And to be in the 4-3, you kind of have to switch up your thresholds a little bit just because that's the type of players you're going to need for the type of things that you need done. Like your edge rushers. Maybe you need to bring in a couple of guys that are only, 6'3", 250 as your speed guys. Maybe at your defensive line you need to bring in, Lucas and Gary size guys that are, 6'4", 6'5", 275, 285, just to be, because that was one thing that I saw a lot last year is there was no speed. It seemed like there was a lot of power, but there was no speed to it. And if you want to have a decent 4-3, you've got to have at least one or two speed guys to be
Yeah.
able to, eat up those offensive linemen. I mean, you got your strength guys that eat up the blocks, but you got to have your speed guys that can get around that and make the plays. So is this the year that they could kind of start shifting their thresholds a little bit just to fit the type of defense that they're wanting to play?
Potentially, I do think, in the 3-4, I think Green Bay went like exceptionally heavy with their 3-4 outside linebackers. That's the only thing that I may say, like, maybe they won't tweak it because they kind of were like already kind of in a weird spot where it was like, oh, this Gary's 277, we're putting him at 3-4 outside linebacker. Like, that was kind of a strange thing because they didn't have any speed out there at all, right? But yeah, I think they got to find one even in the 4-3. It would be really nice to find like that guy. It's probably, I still think if it's going to be that guy, it's probably not going to be somebody who's, hovering around 240. It'll probably be somebody who's 250, which I think, brings in the Ezraku conversation if he just adds like 5 more pounds at the combine and is like still good to go. And like
I've
the
got five
athleticism
pounds
is
for
there.
him right here.
I think I can hand off some too,
Uh,
especially I loved him, man. And I know we're more in the D lineman, but I
yeah,
think it was, what was it? I think they were playing Mizzou. I don't know. I can't remember the game off the top of my head, but there was a tight end and then the running back, and he put such a swim move over the both of them that
yeah.
I had to rewind it like 3 or 4 times. Just like, did he really just pop these two guys? And it was just amazing.
He's got the
and
Euro cross chop type of thing going on too, and it works. The cross
and
chop dips, all
yeah,
those things. Like, he can get to it, and it is impressive. And it's already the BC connection is already there. Like,
Yep.
and
we can
going
make that
back to
happen.
your question about bending thresholds, Joe, the part where Ezeraku has a leg up on a lot of those lighter edge guys, and it's something that we've talked about Mafi in our little draft group, is he's long. Like, he's not one of those, like, you see like a Nolan Smith or some of these other kind of compact speed rushers where it's like, okay, there's it's not that they're just light, they're light and short armed kind of thing and stuff, whereas Donovan, he's the guy that he can tie his shoes standing straight up kind of thing and stuff. And he doesn't have the broadest shoulders, but like you could see him getting to like a good 252, keeping his agility, all that kind of stuff you want to see. And that's where I do think, 5 pounds here and there, they could be like, okay, we'll take this guy at 244 and be okay with it because he can, we're confident in our strength and conditioning program. He'll be able to ward off blockers and keep himself clean, and we're gonna protect him with this and that and stuff. I think that's more believable than like if he had 32-inch arms and you're like, oh, okay, he's breaking like 2 thresholds and that kind of thing. So I think they'll stick to it, but on a one-off, I think they'll be more willing to kind of like, okay, we need this type of guy. Let's go get him, even if he's a little light or if he's a little this. And I do think that the scheme opens the door for that. And it's kind of funny because the old scheme, it was like you need specific guys who can do specific things at specific positions. This one now, I feel like what Hafley has shown is on the interior, Slayton was his like oddball, where it's like that's just a big dude, and like he's there to anchor the middle of the line. I think in his highest of hopes, he would have four or two guys on the interior that are kind of it's the whole like interchangeable safety thing, where it's like you don't know which guy is your nose and which guy is your three tech on a given down. And that way, like if you've got guys who can play that at 295 to 310, 315, that's the ideal that he's looking for. And I don't know if he really cares that they're short, tall necessarily. Just like they can't be such outliers in two directions if you look at them on like a spread chart kind of thing of where their measurements and stuff line up. So I do think that's what they're going for in terms of what they're looking for on the interior. And I think in a roundabout way, Joe, it does open up more doors as opposed to like we're looking for a 6'5" guy with 34 plus inch arms who's 315 and like he's got to hit 5 thresholds, and then like you get to round 4 and you're like, okay, we'll take a Dean Lowry even though he's short armed, but we're late enough in the draft. Whereas now you're kind of like we're early enough that it's like we'll do this because we need that 3 tech penetrator who will play the run but also is going to just force escalate our entire pass rush. So I do think it opens up more avenues for everybody in that regard.
And they have kind of kicked the thresholds out once before, just barely, and they took Jair in the first round, who just was barely under a threshold for them with the height. So that's why I'm wondering if maybe they'll bend the thresholds a little bit more this year, being that it's a different defensive scheme than they've been working with in the past with their old thresholds.
And then even with Ja, that's another one where he's slightly under on height, but he meets everything else, kind of thing. So it does create. They've always been willing to bend a little bit, but it can only be in one direction. They're not gonna do it not on day 1 or day 2. They're not gonna do it like, oh, this guy is short and small kind of thing, and we're gonna like take it. Like it's very rare early in the draft. But getting back to D linemen,
yeah, I've been derailing everything.
No,
it's good.
Fine.
This, like I said, this position is going to create so much of the movement. I really do think this is the tipping point for the Packers draft, because it's going to determine what they do when in this draft. Because I do think they need across the edge in the tackle rooms. They've whether they bring Slayton back or not, you've got to try and improve at least one player in each room in this draft. So I know you've got a couple edge crushes, Jake, and this is the D line talk. So give us those hopes that you've got that you're clinging to for round 1.
For edge or for D line?
Either.
All of it.
Take it where you want.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the issue, whatever with the dismissal was at Virginia, if that's kind of a not a big deal, and I know there's gonna be a lot of talk about that this week, like, man, Mike Green has it. He has it. And if they're gonna break it and go get the smaller guy, might as well get a guy who can run people over when he strikes you in the chest. Like that. And again, it's one rep. It's happening in a drill that's probably, favoring the edge rushers a little bit because they can go kind of any which way. But to have a guy who clearly saw that guys were quick setting during those drills and were like, okay, they're quick setting. Well, I just got to go straight at them. Like that bend, that physical play, like he has so much to like. Like if they're going to bend it, like not for Ezaraku, like who is, again, as we mentioned, like he's 248 the Senior Bowl. He looked just as spry as he did if he was playing anywhere less, like all throughout Boston College, and he has the 34.5-inch arms, right? That's going to be a big deal for them. But like if they believe in the production with Green, if they believe like this is a different player we absolutely must have for this room, then let's go get it. Other than him, the two obvious ones that are like very much like, oh, hey, these are Green Bay guys. I mean, it's Stewart and Williams from Georgia, right? Stewart from A&M, Williams from, those are like the consummate, like, oh yeah, yep, this is it, right? Oh, the production's not there. Oh, well, we know they're like 9+ RAS athletes. Like we know that. So like for Stewart, who I think people are kind of like, he's in that same type, right? Where it's kind of like, oh, Van Ness Gary, like, can you kind of push him inside a little bit? I think so, but also like I know on PFF, a lot of places he was listed at 290, came in at 281. That's 4 pounds heavier than where Gary was when he was rolling around through the draft. So if he's somebody where you're like, yeah, we believe in all of that explosiveness, all of that power, some of the stuff he showed at the Senior Bowl, like all of that stuff, like I can't imagine they wouldn't be interested there, based on the previous history, and if they continue down that road, and same with Williams, right? Like who, again, the production not great, but dude is just like if they want the run game production that they got out of Van Ness and Gary this past year, and they want it to like potentially a different level, then go get him if he's there. Like he is going to provide that for you. He's got enough length. He can use it at times. It's about a consistency thing, bringing it. So there's going to be a lot of edge rushers as well in the first round, second round, like that are going to go pretty early. And like if Green Bay kind of wants to step out of there, like yeah, I don't see why they shouldn't. And we'll be eagerly awaiting what James Pierce's measurements look like as well. He's probably going to be closer to the 240 than the 250, but there's so many of them that you look at one thing or the other. It's like, oh, will they work outside the thresholds for an Ezraku or Green? Will they take Scorton? Will they take Stewart? Will they take Williams? Like there are a lot of options for them if they want to improve that room for sure.
The funny thing is under Stewart, my first note is prototypical Packer size.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same as every other one the Packers have drafted.
Yep. It's like look at how he moves. He isn't sacked anybody in about a month and a half, but look at the way he moves. Like that is just very much them. That's how they operate. And to their credit, clearly Gary, they saw something and it's worked. I know injuries have hurt it. Now he's switching schemes, but like clearly they saw something, and obviously they saw probably a similar thing in Van Ness when they took him. So there's a clear, as you said, Joe, prototypical Packer selection. Like I would be shocked if Stewart wasn't someone that they are talking so much about this week, the week after this coming combine, and go like, yeah, he's just checking boxes. He went to the Senior Bowl. Packers love to go, that direction plenty. So yeah, I can't imagine Stewart's not there. And I remember reading, because I hadn't really dug into Stewart a whole lot during the fall until about October, because one of the guys I listen to and read, he did a mock draft and he put Stewart as like exactly like if you read the blurb, you go, oh, he sent him to the Lions. But if you read the blurb, it was like, oh, yeah, okay, that's Green Bay. He's young player, tremendous athlete, traits over production, and like that is so them, so them.
You gotta think that the Packers have that one guy in the scouting room that just does he meet the Packer threshold?
Oh, yeah.
Does he meet the is he 6'5", 275? There's got to be that one that eventually they're just gonna have to say, shut the fuck up, get out of here, leave us alone. We're gonna take this guy whether he fits it or not. But yeah, him, and since we're kind of touching on edge here for a minute. Oh, come on, get my fingers working here. Ashton Gillette out of Louisville, I thought fit a lot of the same thresholds. I always put this disclaimer out there when it comes to our draft stuff. I don't put any round grades on anybody. I let people smarter than me do that. I just look at film and say, yeah, that guy might fit. And I think Gillette fit a lot of the Packers thresholds, and he played similarly. That I think his athletic traits are going to be that of which the Packers normally go after.
Yeah, another guy who can be explosive and also powerful, and combine the two when he would like to. Yeah, that was somebody where I was looking at it in the summer. I'm like, oh my goodness, like this guy's popping everywhere. And then Brian obviously comes in, and saying, nah, he's not very tall. So he's kind of like, I don't think
I've learned to say, Brian, shut the fuck up. I don't care. This is who I like. This
Brian
is how
goes,
it's going to be.
Yeah. He's like, he's just not very tall. I'm like, I get it. But like,
But Brian shouldn't say much because, and to kind of lead our way back to defensive line, one of the guys Brian Maffey has been talking about a lot is that Deontay Corleone. Well, he's only
Yeah.
listed as 6'1", and that's pretty short for a defensive lineman. That's Mike Daniels' height, and
Yeah.
Mike Daniels was viewed as a short defensive lineman.
Yeah, I don't know why they would shy away from that. They can play the leverage game so much better, right? If they have enough traits and they have enough play strength, like you can play that leverage game as a shorter guy. As long as the technique is there, like you can absolutely win that way. I think there might be one guy down the board of D line who I was thinking of for that. Oh yeah, there is. I think it's Peebles from Virginia Tech, who's just like, yeah, he's the ball of energy, but like, yeah, he's short, but like he's going to be able to play the leverage game and play the pad level game. Like he's going to be able to win a lot in that way simply because he's going to be going up against, 90% of the guys are taller than him. And if they're standing up at all, like they're in trouble because of how he plays and how low he can play. So yeah, I think it'd be great to not, it would be great if Green Bay was like, yeah, we don't need to always check this box necessarily. Like, how does he play like, does he play like he's a 6'3", 310-pound guy sometimes because of how like strong and how good the technique is and how good the pad level is and how well he can anchor even at that size? Like it would be great to see them kind of venture a little bit out more to kind of see like to recognize and also draft those types where it's just like, yeah, we just like the player. And Jaden Reed was a great example of that. It was kind of like, whoa,
Yeah,
they Jaden Reed, whoa, like that was kind of out of nowhere. And then and the more you dug into it, the more like, oh yeah, they're right. Like they went outside. They're like, we love this guy. And if you didn't, in that draft, if you didn't go back to 2021 and you stuck more in 22, you kind of, be a little disappointed. But once you go back to 21, you go, oh yeah, no, they already saw it a year before. They know, like, and it would be great to see them do that with defensive line, whether it be 3 tech, if they want a 1 tech, if they want a versatile guy, like just have, guys who go out and just ball would be awesome and be athletic, of course, but guys who can just ball at defensive tackle would be
and it's
very
Dante
welcomed.
Corleone. I messed that up, so I apologize if he's listening. He happens to listen to the show. But just to stay on him a little bit, and again, I hate putting comparisons, but he did remind me a lot of Mike Daniels. And the thing about him is he's not going to be asked to be put. He's not going to ask to put on weight like Mike did. Mike came in as like 6 foot, 6'1", 290, and they needed him to put on weight. Corleone already has that weight on him and is playing as that disruptive D tackle guy. And in my little experience of playing football and what I remember the coaches talking about when playing defensive line is you want to get low. And that goes to your leverage type thing, Jake. Is if he can already get lower than what the offensive lineman can get, then he's got a leg up on him. And I said he's got good size, although he's a little bit shorter, and he's got good strength and he's very disruptive. And he's got a hell of a motor on him. It seemed like he never quit. And I just want a guy with the last name Corleone on my team because I'm a big Godfather guy. So I can just imagine all the edits I can make right now with him on the team.
Yeah, he would be awesome. It's been a long time because he obviously had to kind of step away for medical stuff one of his previous seasons, and right, so it was, I think he was being talked about a lot. Even I think I want to say for 2022 or no 2023 NFL draft too is kind of like we're waiting for him to potentially early declare. And it was like he goes back, and then there's you know the health stuff that he had to kind of take care of. But yeah, I mean he's played nose, he's played 3 tech, like he is, as you said, he is downright disruptive. Pretty much anywhere you want to line him up, that would be awesome. If Green Bay just decided like, yeah, so if we want to kind of almost kind of 2 birds 1 stone, that's right, like and have him be able to be more multiple in the front if they want him to be that. If they don't, that's fine. He can settle into a position because I think he can succeed at either. Like yeah, that is somebody who has just dropped way off the radar because he's been in college a while, because he's hung around there at Cincinnati. But like yeah, he can be so disruptive when he's at his peak.
Mike, I suppose this is the time because I'm going to take a minute to talk about my guy here pretty soon. But you got two Michigan guys that are coming out. Do you want to speak on them a little bit? I suppose I can give you a quick minute or two to say what you got to. And if you throw national championship, I'll mute you in a heartbeat.
So Mason Graham, we'll talk about Mason here because of the two, I think Mason's the one, they would draft in the first if he somehow magically got to 23, which I highly doubt, or if they make a move to move up to get him. Because like we've been talking about, that three technique is a spot that you've got to have to run a extremely successful 4-3 defense. And I think so it works in a couple ways. I think if you improve the three tech spot, you can rotate that guy with Wyatt. Kenny goes back to being your de facto nose tackle where his, especially at this point of his career, his skill set plays up at that spot as opposed to him trying to be like a gap shooting three tech at this point. But what Mason gives you is that guy who, he put on so many different hats for Michigan. He was obviously your three tech. He's a guy who came in as a true freshman and didn't look out of place, which is really wild to do as an NCAA defensive lineman. Like, just like we say in the NFL, rookies suck. True freshmen generally do struggle, especially on the line of scrimmage. But he never really looked out of place as a true freshman, especially down the stretch. Played his best in the biggest games, and you saw it in the 2023 season. You just see so many, and some people might say like, it's the highlight plays, but no, like just on a down to down basis, he's chucking people, splitting double teams. He's the reason that Michigan got away without having an elite edge room the past few seasons, because you're just you're just putting so many resources to plugging up the middle of your O line, because you're like, if we single block that guy, he's going around them. If we double team him, he's splitting them or juking them into each other and going around the two of them. And you know the stereotype wrestling background, not the tallest guy, not the longest arms, but knows how to use his weight, use his strength, use his leverage, and his push pull move. You hear guys talk about winning fast, and Wyatt is probably the only guy on the interior who wins fast, just getting out of his stance. Graham can do that for you, either shooting out of his stance or with that push pull move, because his refinement with that technique is so good. And like I said, the reason he would get in range for Green Bay is where I wonder how much Groot would be willing to look outside of thresholds, because it's like he's a little bit stubby, he's a little shorter. He should weigh pretty good because he's a pretty stocky kid, and he should test pretty well. He's not necessarily Bruce Feldman's freak list, but you see the guy move out there. You watch and you just the thing that I point to is, you can look at any of his highlights, but you especially go to the run to the championship game last year, the game against Ohio State, the Rose Bowl game against Bama, where he just eviscerates some of Bama's interior O-line. I know it's not the O-line from the 2000s and 2010s, but he just put on a clinic, especially in that overtime. He took over on several downs in that overtime. And not to say any player is a sure thing or anything like that, but him hitting would solve so many of their issues on the D line, because, like I said, you shore up that three tech, and without accounting for what Wyatt was doing before his injury, if you shore up that three tech position, it just improves so many of the other things you do. It allows your power edge rushers to get to the quarterback because they're getting a push from the interior of the D line. And on top of that, if Wyatt is that guy, you can play the both of them at the same time and really just chew up interior offensive line, especially against the less athletic lines you're going to face multiple times this season. So that's my thing on that's my roundup on Graham. And then for Grant, so this, I'll use this as as the pogo stick to get us into day two. I think he would be more of a day two pick for the Packers. It's one of those, I think it's a little criminal to say he's a high ceiling, low floor guy, because I do think the floor is as a run stuffer. He's got some technique things to work out, but what 6'3" plus 340 plus defensive lineman from college doesn't have technique stuff to work out? Those guys are going top 5 if they don't have technique things to work out. But he's going to, at worst, he's that guy who's going to clog the interior of your line and give you five-ish good pass rush sets a game, because he's just going to either shoot a gap or run a guy over like he did to UW in the championship game a year ago. So, but I think the reason he would go R2 more for the Packers is, I think it's more theory, and he's just big for what Green Bay prefers out of their defensive tackle. Especially, we kind of talked about, what's the difference between what they're drafting for the 3-4 versus half these 4-3. And unless he trims out to like 325, 328 or something, I just can't see them taking a 330 plus 340 D tackle in the first round, even if they are staying at 23. I just don't really see it even at this point. So I think he would be a day two guy. I don't know if he would get to 55, but like if you do the 2008 where you move back, I've seen a couple people do like if they move back and recoup and all that kind of stuff. That's a guy that if you go into the first third, top half of the second round, you could look at him there, kind of thing. But I'll turn it back over to you guys. Day two guys that intrigue you for the Packers.
I'll let Jake talk more on it, because my thing, like I said earlier, I don't do round grades on things. So I'll talk about guys, but if you ask me what round I think they're going to go in, I couldn't tell you, just because that's not my deal. Because I could say this guy is an easy first rounder and he won't get drafted until the 7th round.
Hey, that's how it goes, though. There's always going to be those guys who fall through the cracks, where you see the good film and you wonder what's going on, and maybe they're not the biggest athlete out there, and they teams still get the absolute best out of them. So that certainly happens.
Throw this out there. My former co-host Nick Gregory and I were huge on Puka Nacua, and we kept getting told, well, he's not going to get drafted. He's not going to get drafted. And the Rams took him in the 7th, and now he's like one of the top receivers in the league.
Yep. That was my most viewed video for a long time, was Puka. The Rams fans were all over that. I remember most Rams fans commenting like, oh, you ran 4.6. How can he be good? It's like, buddy, I don't care. Receivers don't line up in a track starting block. They used to kind of, but back in the day, but they don't anymore. And so, yeah.
And the thing about him is he caught everything.
Yep.
There was nothing that could get, if it was within a span of his reach, he could catch everything. But again, I'm derailing everything. So Mike wants to know day two guys, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to start with Darius Alexander, just because you just talk about disruptive. You talk about just violent pop in the hands. Just got two-hand swipe moves. Like, he's got the Brooks two-hand swipe, but he also can run right through you with the bull rush. He can kind of turn the corner a little bit. And I think what the Senior Bowl highlighted about him that people were maybe not expecting is watching him just absolutely destroy offensive linemen and like full team stuff as like a 7-tech, almost a wide 9. He's like way out there as a defensive lineman, and just two-hand swiping dudes, winning inside moves like he's like an edge rusher. So guys that big, I'm surprised he moves like that. And I think the run game production in terms of tackles for loss, in terms of the stop rate, isn't as great. But I do think he has, if he shows you enough power to win kind of that speed to power leverage game where he's staying low and he's driving through guys in the bull rush, I think that tells me that I think what he's doing, and this shows up on film too, what he's doing against the run is he's trying to win arm over. He's trying to run through guys, right? And again, part of that certainly is you can attack in one gaps against the run. That's not necessarily things that they don't teach, but a lot of the time is what you want to see from Mike's Michigan guys. You want to sit there, you want to extend, you want to see what's developing in front of you, and then you shed an attack when you see where the back is going. If he improves there, I think they're getting the player they potentially want. Now, he is a lot older, right? He is, I think, what Devontae Wyatt was, and he will be that when they draft him. I mean, they already took Wyatt. They've already taken a chance there, right? And it's day two. I know the whole thing about like, oh, maybe he doesn't get the third contract. Yeah, but if he gets a second one and he's in the prime and he plays till he's 32 and he's playing at that high level, I'm not as concerned about it. And I think they would be less concerned about it on day two as well. So if Alexander's there, 54, 55, I forget which pick, it might be 55, which I think they have that second round pick. Like in terms of the disruptive capabilities of him, in terms of how much he provides as a pass rusher, I would love to see that. I really would.
Well,
I
with
think for the
as
Packers to have a
little
good defensive line draft, the key word you want to hear, not that they mean anything, but the word you want to hear the draftniks say is disruption. This is a disruptor. Like, that's what they're looking for. And like I said, they need more guys who can attack a half man and make something good happen. Like, they have guys who can do it. Brooks has done it at times. Kenny was figuring it out at the end of the year. Wyatt did it when he was healthy. Wooden, that's a guy that like maybe, but if you can improve on him, you do kind of thing and stuff. Same thing, obviously, for Mosby, Cox, and stuff. Guys who played a lot of snaps but need to be more proven and more proficient. But that's the name of the game this year is they've just got to get more disruptive guys. Like they don't have to be the biggest names, but they just need guys who are going to go kick butt and chew bubblegum kind of thing. But Joe, take it.
Well, I was just going to say that touching on Jake's point of the third contract, the Packers hand out so few third
Yeah.
contracts anyway that that one's not even in my realm. As long as we can
Right.
get him through a second contract, I'm good on it. So yeah, and I agree with the disruption thing, and that goes back to my point on the speed. We have enough guys that are strength and leverage guys that getting somebody that can be disruptive with speed on top of the strength would add so much to this defense and would help them out so much that you know the Packers did well enough this past year with in the first year of Halfley's defense that I think we're all surprised at what they finally ended up ranking at. Here we were bottom tier for so many years, and okay, well, we're bringing in this new guy. We'll probably hit about mid tier. No, we were near top 10 in a lot of categories for the defense. So if you can add somebody that has speed and disruption or disruption through speed, who knows? This could be a top 5 defense easily.
Yeah. He isn't Alexander isn't quite the mover that Nolan is. Nolan's on a different level. I don't know how Nolan moves like he does. But I think him and Harmon are kind of in that similar vein of like they're twitchy enough athletes, and you've seen a little bit more from Harmon in the run defense category, in my opinion. But you see different ways they can win as a rusher, right? It's not just, oh, I can only run through the chest of players. It's like, no, they can, as Mike was talking about, find the guys who can attack half man, guys who can cross the face of guys, like just being able to move with the quicks, move with the agility, not so much this clunky mover who can only kind of do one thing, is having that fluidity, being able to kind of, get to a second move or get to something else, change direction if you need to. Like guys like that are going to help this team win in January. And I do think Alexander fits that mold really, really well.
I'm going to throw out a name here, and again, I don't know round wise, so you can let me know what you think on him. But the last guy that I really watched was TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. And I thought he had good speed and quickness. I didn't think he had so much the strength. So, I mean, he still had good enough strength. And I thought he had a solid pass rush move set for a defensive lineman. I think that could add in a lot of what the Packers need. Maybe not as a every down type guy, but maybe unless they can develop him more with some things. But it seemed like he was somebody that that kind of also fit the Packers mold when it came to what they've done in the past.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find his thing at this. Okay. Yeah, so Senior Bowl when he was 6'3" and 3/4, 284. So, a little bit more in that like wooden, Colby Wooden type of area. But as you said, if you want just kind of the like come in on the hockey line, so to speak, and come in on that second line, go get the quarterback, like I think he's going to be very good in that regard. No question about it. As you said, the speed, the explosiveness, all of that. Like if you want to bring in a type of closer late in games who's got like, 100-mile-per-hour fastball, like he's probably going to be one of those guys for sure. Is he going to be able to, is Green Bay going to want him to be able to hold up, on early downs playing at 284 if he indeed decides to play at that weight? Probably not. But as you said, if their goal is to add disruption and juice and any type of that, like excellent functional athleticism and movement skills into that defensive line, like he certainly fits the bill there.
And that's what I didn't think he was that underweight, but I mean, I
No, it didn't look like it.
even
No.
sure what his frame is. I don't know if he could add on at least 7 because if he could get to that 290 mold, I think that would make the Packers even happier if he could keep his abilities at 290. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, that would be interesting. I got one more name, and then I'm going to talk about
Really
my
quick,
guy.
really
Since
quick. As you said, if he gets up to Nolan's weight, we're fine. We are totally fine because he can turn the corner. He's got this. He's got all the hand technique, as a rusher. Like if he gets to Nolan's weight in the 290s, yeah, no question. I think Green Bay will be in
Okay, before Joe gets to his guys, okay, I apologize. I'm gonna have to duck out, but just want to say, Jake, thank you so much for joining up.
for sure.
And like I said, there's 2 keys to this game. They need more disruptors from this D line draft, and on top of it, you want to have the rush that the Cooper Quay blitzes become a sprinkle on surprise attack thing, not a oh my god, we can't get pressure unless we send one of these 2 guys. Like that's the name of it. And that's against any O line. And I know that the Philly line is different and all that kind of stuff, but that's the thing that's what you're working for. That's the goal. But before I head out, Jake, thanks so much. Joe, thanks for not firing and replacing me. And we'll talk to you guys later. Take care.
yeah,
See you, Mike.
are you looking for a co-host gig, Jake? I may be in the market for somebody here pretty soon.
Oh man, that's
But I won't keep you too much longer because we've already been
No,
at
you're
this
good.
for an hour. But there's a couple more names that I would like to mention.
Yeah.
One of them I don't think is going to be the speed guy, but he could be an easy, maybe TJ Slayton replacement if that's the route they kind of want to go. And he's got a great first name to go with it. And if we could have 2 of these guys on the team, that would be great. You got Hercules Lucas Van Ness, and this guy's name is Thor Griffith. Uh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
good off the snap. He was more of a block eater. I'm not sure if he's more of a run stopper than a pass rusher, but he was a big boy. He does have some quickness. I wish he would use his strength a little bit more, but he did get some good arm extension. He really did impress me with his size. Like I said, I don't know if he's more in that Slayton Gilbert Brown mold where he's not going to give you too much of a pass rush, or if he's going to be that guy that you throw out there because you're it's 3rd and 1 and you got Saquon Barkley beating down on you. What do you want to do? You want to throw your big boys out there and say you're not getting past us.
Yeah, that's the perfect late round pull. Because the production at Harvard was so good. And then comes to Louisville. And yeah, from what I've seen, I think I've only got a few games of his that I could find from Louisville. But yeah, it was interesting because he didn't have a lot of snaps this past season. I think he had like somewhere in like the 330 range, which was surprising. You got guys like Harmon, who, that he was a little bit shorter on it with like 500, but yeah, he was only in there a little bit. And they put him a lot at nose from what I saw, and it was kind of like, okay, that's fine. Like he's clearly can hang if you want him to hold the point of attack. I think he's totally good in that regard, but he definitely has like the club swim. He can get after you with the bull rush. Like if you let him get some depth and then kind of attack with that speed to power a little bit more, I think he can do it. So yeah, I don't think he's necessarily pigeonholed into anything. I was hoping we were going to honestly get to talk about this guy during this one because yeah, I agree. Like I it must be because he's only got one season at Louisville and people haven't found Harvard tape, which is totally fair. That's not an easy thing to find previously, but like, yeah, the production scores look really good.
And it's hard to really grade a guy off of college like Harvard because they're not like a known
right
football school, and that's what I've seen with a lot of other guys, you see him go to places like Harvard, or what was the guy that I watched a few years ago? He played for Delaware. Well, the only known player that came out of Delaware for the longest time was Joe Flacco. So,
Yeah.
I can't think of his Zach Kerr.
Okay.
And I loved him, but nobody really knew anything about of him because Delaware. So
Yeah.
yeah, Harvard is one of those hard ones to really grade a guy off of. I'm glad I saw him with Louisville because I was like, man, that's a big boy moving around pretty good.
Yeah, they gave him some opportunities to play some like three techs, kind of like 4-eye. It was more shade kind of over the tackle, but like when they allow him to kind of let him loose, turn the corner, he can do it. But it did seem like that they were more concerned that nobody else could hold the point of attack as well as him. And they're like, we got to keep him at nose. Like, we got to stop the run. There's got to be some way we could handle this. And it was like he was getting tasked with that and doing a really good job. Like, I think, yeah, if there's a gem on day 3, which it's hard because this D line class is insane, and there's going to be guys that fall to day 3 that probably wouldn't in other ones just because of how deep it is. And like, he is certainly somebody who, like, it would make perfect sense. I know the director of scouting just went to Jacksonville to be the GM, but that's like the guy that, like, oh, the Rams picked him up on day 3 when they didn't have a lot of picks and he's good. Like, oh wow, nobody's surprised there. So like, yeah, he feels like that type of player where like you're gonna get pretty decent production out of him in the league at a discount that he probably shouldn't be. He should be sitting as like a 5th or 6th round pick, right? Like that shouldn't be the case. But yeah, he was somebody who I think on Friday night I'm watching. I'm like, if nobody else brings him up during this, I'm going to, and I'm glad you did because
Well,
he is a
I'll give you a
fun
little
player.
behind the curtain view on my brain. Is I find a site, and the one that I've been using lately is NFL Draft Buzz,
Oh
and I'll
yeah,
go through the
phenomenal.
rankings. And I won't read anything on them because I don't want to go in there with predetermined things. I just go
Yeah.
through to look for names. And I don't always go with the first round guys because, like, man, everybody's going to be talking about this guy.
Oh, for
Everybody's going
sure.
to be talking about this guy. I want to find names that not many people are talking about. So I'll start going to like page 3, page 4, page 5, just looking for different names on. So because, like I said, I with our show we're kind of small enough now that we're not getting the big attention. So I want to let the bigger shows know that let them talk about the big name guys.
Yeah.
The obvious first rounders. I want to be the guy that I find that late rounder that I can say I was on that guy from day one, man.
Yeah. Heck yes. Yes.
So
And he could very well
one
be
guy
that
that
guy. Could very well be that
yeah,
guy. Griffin
he
could
could.
be.
He really could. I mean, he's one of those that I always say that if he would have played at like Alabama or a big school or Ohio State or something like that, then
Yeah.
we could easily be talking about him as a day 1, day 2 type guy. But because he started out smaller, it could be anything. So I got to talk about my guy before we go.
Okay.
I know a lot of people are going to ask me about Deontay Craig, and I'm not really crazy about him. I see what they see in him, that he's got some speed to him and all that. But I think he was more a product of the Hawkeyes defense than he was the driving force of the Hawkeyes defense. And I think one of the main reasons of that is because of the guy that I'm going to talk about now, and that's Yaya Black.
Yes.
This guy is also somebody that probably, depending on what the Packers want to do with the TJ Slayton, could be a Slayton replacement. I'm honestly surprised of what he weighed in at the Senior Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't look it. They said 6'5" and a quarter or something like that, and 337 pounds. And if you look at him, he doesn't look like he's 337 pounds. I don't know if that's the height deal with it. If it's more muscle than body mass, but he's a big man. He's got great strength. I did say I wish he would use his strength and leverage a little bit more. It would seem like he would put that pop in, and then he would let the O lineman dictate what was going on. It's like, man, you're bigger than a lot of these linemen. Use your advantage to him. knock him out of the way. This is where I wish they would start teaching the Reggie White hump move to a lot of these guys,
Oh yeah.
because I think he would be the type that could just really hook that arm and throw. And he's got the run stopping ability. I said he moved around pretty good for for such a big guy, because I'm going into this seeing, okay, they list him as 337. He doesn't look it. So I'm going to put that 337 frame in mind when I'm watching him. And for his size, he moves pretty well. I don't want to put this kind of comparison on him, but he moved like a Don Terry Poe type, where he's this big guy with good movement, that if he went to the combine and popped a, 4.8 40, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But, and this could be a lot of bias for me, but I've not been high on the Hawkeyes for the last few years because they've been so poor with shit. But they always produce a lot of defensive talent. They've got two linebackers that are coming out this year, and Higgins and Jackson, that are getting a lot of talk. They got a lot of DBs that are getting a lot of talk. And really, Yaya's not getting any kind of talk. And I think I think he could easily be a sleeper in this draft, that he's not getting a lot of talk, but he's got a lot of movement and ability that could put him, again, if he went to an Alabama or an Ohio State, that could put him in a higher round than what he's got right now.
Yeah, it's tough when the Hawkeyes have like a down year, and it's kind of like they're only going to probably remember guys who were potentially good the year before. Sebastian Castro certainly being one of those guys. It's where it's like, okay, yeah,
Yes.
they've already got the like he was good last year, could have entered, and now we're keeping an eye on him right again this year. Yeah, because when you look at Yaya Black, it looks like as you said, it must be the height because he doesn't look bigger than say an Alfred Collins, and somehow he, at least
Right.
at this point, is listed like 17 pounds heavier, which is hard to, it's kind of hard to fathom. So it has to be the height or something like that. But yeah, when he plays low enough and gets the push, my goodness, just guys just they're it looks like guys are lined up as like running backs where they're ending up sometimes. Like it is really, really impressive when he plays with that leverage, and he obviously stops the run extremely well. That's what's tough with these like bigger nose tackle types, right? Who stop the run, where it's like they're so gassed from stopping the run that they're like, I got to stand up a little bit more to rush the passer. That happens with so
Yeah.
many of them, right? Tyleik Williams does it. Grant does it at times at Michigan. Like just the bigger guys have that. That's just it happens, right? But when he's low, and he did it a few times at the Senior Bowl as well in the one-on-ones, when he is low, it is very tough for guys to hang on. Like it is, they're doing everything possible. And I think one of them, I forget who it was against, but it was one of the LSU guys. I don't know if it was Jones or if it was Frazier, because Frazier moved around all the time. But like if the coach doesn't get out of the way like that, he's knocking him to the ground and the LSU lineman. Like he is generating a ton of displacement when he stays low and with the immense amount of strength that he has. So like, yeah, if he were to get down to, as you said, if he gets down to around 330 and he's not at the 337 at the combine, and the combine numbers look really good, like if the Packers do want a Slayton type, why not? Right? If they're going to look at all the other types, if they're looking at Grant, if they're looking at Tyleik Williams, they're looking at Alfred Collins, right? Or maybe they're looking at Jamari Caldwell, though he's, I think, closer to 340 as well. Like if he gets down around that 330, and it's like, okay, well, we don't have to spend way up at a one tech if we want one, like perfect spot to do it. If again, him and guys like Griffith who are there on day 3, that they even later on day 3 that they might not be because of how freaking deep this class is, like I don't see why someone like Green Bay, maybe someone else probably will, if Green Bay doesn't take advantage of that. Absolutely.
Well, and the thing that I got to give Yaya credit with is Iowa has a hell of a strength and conditioning crew. That's another reason why it's hard to believe he's 337, because they put them through such a, they basically put him through pro strength and conditioning, that he could probably drop it and still be good, or he could stay the same size and still, produce, maybe not Packer wise, but, somebody's going to take him and say, we don't care that you're 337, you're lean muscle, we're, we're going to throw you out there. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be crazy with him to see what he can do. I think this is one of the first years I've been excited for Hawkeye draft picks in a while, just because we've had a lot of down years. But like I said, Higgins, Jackson, Castro, Wampa, Black, Craig, these guys are going to have the ability to go out there and, really shine. But I haven't been able to ask this of very many other people, and then this will be my last thing, and then we'll kind of close this out. What's one player that you're like, I don't want the Packers to touch him with a 10-foot pole?
I like defensive line or like any position.
Defensive line. We'll
Defensive
just stay
line?
with the position right now.
Yeah. Listen, I get it with this guy. Like I understand why people like him because he can move around and kind of be a disruptor. But man, at 6'7", 340, I don't know where I'm playing Deion Walker from Kentucky. I have no clue. I don't and I get it. He moves pretty well for that size, but there are just so many reps where he's so tall and it's like the pad level. You just not you it's so hard for you to win a lot when you play that high. And I get it. He's insanely tall, so it's very very difficult for him to do it, but it's just like if you're Green Bay and you want like these super dynamic disruptive types and you want like a true positional home for them, like your Nolans, like your Harmons, like your Alexanders who look like the true three techs, like I'm just not sure Walker is that. And I think Walker could be the guy where teams, because again, if he's playing nose, like is Green Bay going to want him, that early because, we're not in the 3-4 anymore and you're not going to have him out there all the time. And I think you're going to have to rotate him a lot because I think a lot of people have pointed out like later in games, he's gassed. He is. And so
Yeah.
I think all of that to me, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure where I'd play him. I know he's a younger player. I know there's a lot of untapped potential there. And I know that he can do stuff from the 5 and the 3 and the 1, but I'm just kind of like, I don't see the consistency yet to kind of like, okay, because Green Bay needs certain things. And I don't always, and I know
Yeah.
we talked about the versatility earlier, and it's really nice to have that, but versatility as kind of like your go-to rather than like, oh, we can move him because he's versatile, but he's great here already, versus like, is he great anywhere, just kind of average to above average everywhere, like not find a home at all. I would want to find a home for a guy. And I feel like I can say that with most of the guys down the list where I go, yeah, okay, he's playing one tech. If Green Bay wants him at the one tech, great. Like that's the home for him, right? As we've talked about with a bunch of the guys at the top already, like yes, 3 tech can do that. We already mentioned Sanders, right? As kind of like, okay, if he's coming in right at the 280, 290, and he's going to be that third down, second hockey line, provide that, late game kind of surge, perfect. Like I think we've kind of zeroed in on his home, even though he's a little bit of a smaller guy in terms of the weight. But it just feels like for me, trying to figure out where Walker plays is the difficult part for me. That's the one thing where I'm kind of like, I would just rather have a guy where I'm like, yeah, he can step in and do this, not he's stepping in and I'm not sure where to go necessarily.
So my guy, and again, I don't know how anybody. I haven't thrown. I get to the point with our chat group on Twitter that it's like I don't want to throw this name out here because it seems like I'm always getting my chops busted with it. So I'm going to throw this name out here as a guy that I would get it if the Packers took him, but me personally, I wouldn't. And that's Eric Gregory out of Arkansas.
Okay.
I said he had a bit of a nice shoulder dip and swim move and had some quickness, but I kind of questioned his motor because it seemed like he would get to the point where, okay, well, I'm not going anywhere, so I'm done. And it just, I kind of question that because, if, and this was the knock on Malik Heath a few years back when he was coming out, that I said the same thing, if they can motivate him to be, give 100%, 100% of the time, they're going to get a hell of a player. Well, it seems like with Gregory, it's just he wasn't giving the 100%. You see a guy like Dante Corleone that was destroying everything, whether he was getting to the point of attack or not. And then you move to Gregory and you're not seeing that with him, that, oh, well, I'm getting double teamed, so we're just going to stand here in the dancing pose and make it look good. And I saw too much of that in some of the games that I watched on him, that I was like, man, I don't want that to I don't want that type of attitude to come onto the Packers, because we get enough drama with a lot of the players that we have now. I don't
Yeah.
want that happening to where he's going to throw the fit like a Devondre Campbell and just say, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore, type thing. And I don't know if that's that with him, or if he was dealing with some kind of injuries, or, what the issues were there with him. But I didn't see motivation in him. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, it's always tough when you have guys like if they're getting double teamed. You see it, I think some of these top guys really work to split them. Like they're not satisfied with just staying there, right? Like they want to, like your Nolans and Graham, obviously, especially is just a guy who will not be denied no matter what. Like, yeah, when you see guys who kind of just like stand up and get held up and aren't getting to other moves, aren't trying something, that's difficult to see for sure.
And like I said, I saw that a lot with him, and it got to the point where I was just like, I don't want to watch anymore. So
Yeah,
I watched like
that's
2 or 3 games of him, and then I kept seeing it. I was like, no, I'm through with it. And I could have missed, a game where he just went all out, but yeah, I don't like that. All right, Jake, we're
I
gonna
got one
wrap it up
more. Can
here.
we do one more?
Oh, you got
Just
one
because
more?
I want to,
Shoot.
yeah, just because I would love to get this name out there. I feel like there's a decent chance that we could hear his name called to be green and gold. That's Joshua Farmer from Florida State. Uh, Almost 6'3", 314 is what he was at the Senior Bowl. 35 and a quarter inch arm length. That's nuts. Just because I think when you watch the film on him, there's a little bit of inconsistency, right, game to game. However, and I do think the anchor against the run would maybe be the concern. But if you're putting him at 3 tech and you can just, again, work on either building up that strength in the lower half or just working a little further on technique, awesome. But when he does against the run is he continually sheds blocks and is working to make the plays. He's good enough athletically. They put him at 5 tech to turn the corner a few times at Florida State. Like he has that level of what we were talking about, the buzzword disruption ability. Whereas, like, as I mentioned with some of the guys where I say the versatility, it's more of like your home is 3 tech, but I can see it at 5 tech if you want to get creative with as we were talking about earlier with Gary or Lucas Van Ness, where you're like, can we move guys around and make things, a little more difficult on some third downs and get creative? Absolutely. I think you can. And Farmer would fall into that category for me. So if he works on the consistency, and again, I to my knowledge right now, I don't think it's going to take more than pick 87 to land Farmer, which, if you're looking on that banking that, build consistency, a lot of upside in the middle rounds, I'm totally good with that. So if like he is, some of the Packers are comfortable with it at 314, they feel like he moves well and he tests well, this coming week, I think he's got to be on that list because I think he shows enough in terms of the flashes as a run defender where you can work on the technique and the pass rush stuff is definitely there. Like I think we should as long as things go well in Indy, I feel like he's going to start creeping on the major Packers podcast of like, this is a guy you have to watch for.
The only knock he's got against him is Florida State, and I still don't think they've ever gotten over the Jamal Reynolds pick from years ago.
That could be. That could be. Maybe Jared Verse and Fisk have got them going, okay, you know what? Maybe they are back. Maybe they are back. That would be the thing, maybe that draws them back in.
And that could be. I did see that
Yeah.
there on the places where I get my game tape, that there were a lot of games on him. It just, like I said before recording, I had a lot of stuff going on this week that I was tuning out. I started catching myself like drifting off and losing focus on things. So I didn't get a chance to look at him yet. Hopefully I'll get a chance before the draft actually steps up. But one last question for you. I've been asking this in the last few that we've had on. Pick 23 on the clock. Packers are talking in the war room. Can't figure anything out. One of the scouts pops up, says, well, I know a guy. your phone rings and they're asking you, what do we do at 23?
Boy.
It can be anything. It can be
Okay.
any position. You don't even have to give
Okay.
me a name. You can just give me a position. Or if you got a name in mind, what it is, you know, what do you got for us, Jake? Who are we taking with number 23?
Okay. I think there are a lot of like sensible ways I could go with this for sure. I kind of mentioned at the top, like I wouldn't mind the Simmons selection at all if they thought the plan was in place for him to start at tackle. I wouldn't mind Nolan or Derek Harmon at all. Matthew Golden's somebody that I would probably be standing up for, but I'm going to throw the curveball here. Not nothing. This is nothing against Musgrave. It's nothing against Musgrave. Okay, there might still be stuff there, but I would love to see 12 personnel with Tucker Kraft and Colston Loveland. I would love to see that. I think the route running chops are spectacular. I think there's enough speed. He's not just like I can run straight up the field, right? He makes those cuts look really, really fluid. Like I would love to see Green Bay go, yeah, okay, maybe the receiver class is down, and maybe we don't want to do that in the first round, right? Where we see these guys more as complementary guys. We don't see the Brian Thomas Jr., the Lab McConkey, the Jefferson and Ayuk were picks in the 20s, right? They don't see that player in the 20s, and they go, no, we'll pivot. We'll get a guy who we think maybe the passing game can run through Kraft and Loveland over the middle of the field is what I would say in the room. I think he's right there with Warren personally. They're different styles for sure. But if you want like your passing game to go through a guy like potentially like a Trey McBride, where they're giving him so many things over the middle of the field, but I think he has more straight line speed. Like I would stand up and go, yeah, go get Loveland. I think if he's there, I think the passing game, if you want to, change it up. We're going to keep this trend going after Jordan Morgan on the offensive side of the ball. That's I think where I would go.
So the Packers haven't taken a wide receiver in 23 years. I think it's been 25 years since the last time they've taken a tight
Yep.
end. That's what Jake's going with his
Tight end.
first round pick.
It's a good class. It's a good class, man. It's a if it's strictly like legitimately, like it's just if you're looking at like, if Goody next week says anything about tight end being deep, look out. Like the reactions from that, I expect we're going to hear him next week go, yeah, defensive line's very deep. We're looking at all, there's a lot of different types, we're taking, we're trying to obviously bolster the pass rush. I'm sure he's going to talk about that. But if he says anything about the tight end class or the running back class, look out, because I'm sure that there will be plenty of uproar. I've already gone on one show and flirted with the idea of Loveland at 23. It was not received well. But man, I mean, this isn't like necessarily like, well, we got to find a player at this position. 23. It's kind of like, no, like who's the best player? Who do you like the most that's sitting there?
Yeah.
Like go get him. Like, and if Loveland happens to be that, which based on my current rankings, I think it's very possible that he is that if he's available there, just go get it done. I know the pass rush, that's you gotta fix that. There's no question. But it's a deep class, and I think they're going to have a lot of different options to kind of tackle it. We kind of talked about edge earlier in the show. Like if they kind of bend things a little bit, they want to go get the speed guy, like they're going to have a ton of options. But if you're really serious about like this whole number one wide receiver thing, I mean, why not work on building your pass game as a middle of field attacking team with Loveland and Kraft? I think could be exceptional for them.
Well, and LaFleur's system always, used their tight end, so it wouldn't be surprising if they and like you said, that's not a knock against Musgrave. He's got
No.
his position on the team too. It's just not what they're wanting his position to be right now. Musgrave was never going to be that inline blocker. He was going to be the, straight down the field. We were hoping he would stay on his feet a little bit more, but
Yeah.
So, all right, Jake, where can the folks find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Jake NFL Draft. Going to be posting a lot more clips on prospects soon here as we kind of get kind of the film watching step of the process kind of rounded up a little bit. And then on YouTube, Jake Schyvinck NFL, going to be doing a lot of stuff. The film rooms on the prospects leading up to the draft. As I said, once the kind of the film process is wrapping up, we'll get to that. And definitely going to be doing a lot of live stuff for the combine, just based on reactions, Probably going to be looking at it as well from a Packers perspective, though I do try to keep it a little more league wide than I used to. But we're probably going to be looking at yeah, this guy hit some athletic stuff. Like, you should be watching him, and I'm sure the combine's going to be a lot of fun for that. There's going to be a lot of quick reactions to that, and that's always a fun time. So
The underwear Olympics, that'll,
yeah.
that's always that time of year that everybody uh, overdoes it with the numbers and stuff. But Jake, again, like Mike said earlier, appreciate you stopping by, giving us your expertise on things. For us, you can follow Mike at Quantum Mike on both Twitter, and I believe that's his Blue Sky. Iowa _ Joe 86 on Twitter, but I have been using the Blue Sky more. So if you're wanting to get a hold of me, it is iowajoe.bksy.social. That's where you can catch me. We don't quite have a show Blue Sky yet, but we are still on Twitter at Ohana Packers. You can find us on the Facebook and the Instagrams and stuff like that, Ohana Packers Edition. New episodes every Tuesday. We still have a good lineup of guests coming up. Still working on a few more things. We got one special guest that is not the typical draft guy, but you can blame me for getting him to watch draft film. That should be coming up pretty quick. I can't remember I keep saying offensive line is the next one, but it's not. That's been the last 2 weeks, so I can't think off the top of my head what next week's episode is. But we have probably somebody lined up great for it. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast. Drop us a rating. 5 stars helps us get boosted up in the ratings, get our name out there. Maybe we can get other guests on, somebody that we haven't had before. Drop us some names. Let us know who you'd like to see come on. We'll obviously get Jake on again at some point to get his thoughts on everything. And, like Mike always says, go Pack Go, and a low.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for the up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know.